I'm Gentleman Josh Hill.
I'm Aaron Jeffrey.
I'm Namajunas VS.
I'm Mike Malott.
I'm Rafian Stock.
Tune in to
Donttap
Donttap Podcast.
Donttap
Podcast.
John Jones.
Follow me on Twitter.
Hey, I'm UFC President Dana White, and you're in the ring with Cal McGregor.
To me, the Lions are the number one rankings out there. Those guys are the ones who really do their homework.
Man, that's why I'm saying the rankings are bullshit.
From Canada.
Got a really high fight IQ.
But this fight, I'm telling you, it's a flip of a coin.
Levels to the shit.
So many high-level guys.
So, like, the line is crazy.
Oh, there we go.
Donttap Podcast here with Billy Briz of Pub Sports Radio. Billy, I just wanted you to do a quick recap of your week last week because I know you did pretty well. How did your last event? How did that do for you before the break?
Yeah, it was a pretty good week. Able to end up in the parlay and end up hitting on a couple straight bets. It was one of those type of weeks where I would say, if anything, it was more of a confidence builder type of week. I was pretty heavily on that Ian Gary spot, real confident in that spot. Yeah, it was greasy, but we end up getting the W. End up hitting. The main event slide is just going downhill, back-to-back underdogs in the main event. Needed Yuri Prokoshka to cash a fucking crazy 25-1 parlay, and that was literally the last leg. All money lines too, and that ended up not cashing for me. But overall, solid good week. Ready to get back to the grind of it. Sometimes when you get those weeks off, I feel like as a bettor, it's like a yin and a yang. It's like, yeah, now I get to kind of relax a little bit, but then the other side of me is like, damn, I was just starting to get hot, I feel like, at the end of the last month.
And how did you do? Did you get out alive with the Masvidal and Diaz fight?
Yes, I took my ass to sleep. The best bet sometimes is no bet.
I fell asleep. I didn't watch it.
I didn't watch it either.
I was in on Masvidal by decision. I just thought that was going to be the play, or even maybe a draw because it would just play out that way. But man, when I saw those numbers, I was just like, well, I'm glad I wasn't really invested that much because just crazy. And shout out to MMA Jesus, who finally didn't call a robbery because he was on the Diaz side. Sorry, I got to call him out on that one. I got to call him out. All right. So yeah, let's dig into it. I got some takes. We all know that if there's going to be a scenario where you're going to really allow me to bet Jasmine at plus money, we're going to talk about it. You already know what it is. It's Jazz Division Fight Week, and I'm only going to stay off it if it really doesn't make sense as far as value on the line. And there was value all week up until the change, and then even on the change, we'll get into it. But I will let you bring your first piece to the table.
I think we got to start off the podcast with the Jasmine Jasovicius fight and Fatima Klein. I'm going to swing it back to you. You got to start it up here.
All right. Well, I wasn't going to start with Jasmine as the fight, but I think that it needs to be talked about. I think this is a level check, man. I think that even in what people would think, are the negatives in Jasmine's game, where in the two fights she lost, that's a crude experience. Being in there, being behind Natalia Silva, trying to catch up in the cage and try to figure that game plan out and that puzzle out. That was definitely a thing for her. Now she's putting out volume nonstop in her fights. But if we look at it, let's just really dig into this. 17 takedowns in 7 fights. She's a strong-ass wrestler. And, well, what I saw out of Fatima as well, too, really strong grappler, she's going to maybe at times look to take this to the mat. Potentially if Jasmine can force a little bit of pressure. And I know that she has pop in her punches and she has pressure herself as well, too. But if she goes to take Jasmine down, I think that one scenario where this is going to play out like it has many times when people try to take Jasmine down, she's going to get to that overhook. She's going to get to that head control. She's going to get to that sprawl. And once she does, she may even be able to take her back and or smush her down to the ground. And it's a reoccurring theme. If we get past level 1 to level 2 where she goes for a takedown, we're working up against the cage. We're getting to that underhook or even running the overhook still and still being able to cage wrestle better than most of the women in MMA today. So I don't know. I know I'm speaking in wheeze and whatever else. Obviously, there's a fan side of this for me too. But I just think that, especially because we're getting her at plus money, I do see the hype in Fatima. She is absolutely she's got hell in her hands, and she does have some solid grappling as well too. But I just think that it's wrestling versus more of a grappling side of things, and I think the wrestling is going to win. I think on the cage, Jasmine is just, she's vicious with elbows, vicious with knees. I just see her landing. When she gets down to the ground, she's always active. She's working towards that crucifix. Could she find herself in a couple bad situations at times in this fight? Potentially. but especially because we're now looking at, plus money. If she was huge chalk and this girl came out of nowhere, I'd probably just stay off the fight. But now you're going to give me plus 108. I think it's still sitting at right now that, the line is sitting at. So it's a level check for me. I think that we need to see it from Klein. And I think that if we look at this sort of play, it's actually been an auto bet for me. It's if you are unproven and you're coming up against the person who is proven, and even if they've won or lost or whatever your perception of the person is, and they're at plus money, I'm hitting that plus money. So it's a level check plus money dog for me. Jasmine Jasudavicius, I just see that she's going to be much bigger. That's going to be another thing too. And I know that in wingspan and in height, it's not that much of a differential, but she's going to be coming up in weight, and sure, she might not have to do a big cut, and that you might look at that as an advantage to Klein as well too. I just don't see it. I think she's going to be, Jasmine carries around bigger weight. She fights with and trains with pretty much all men at this point. One of her main training partners that, they throw each other around is Tisha Gothro. So for me, I'm just going to, Jasmine Jasudavicius plus money all day long.
These are one of those fights where my biggest concern, I should say, in this fight is I need to see something at media day of how Jasmine's approaching the fight, because my concern is if she thinks that she's about to go out here and offensively wrestle in this spot, she's going to get a rude awakening that her wrestling is not better than Fatima Klein's. I think the way she wins this fight is via volume through striking on the feet. Granted, it makes it more of a firefight because Jasmine Jasudavicius is a little bit hittable on the feet. But if there's one thing I'll say about Jasmine Jasudavicius, she going to throw that volume, baby. She's going to get down, bite down on that mouthpiece and go forward, regardless of how the fight's going for her. And the sketchiest fights in Jasmine's career are when she isn't able to work her offensive grappling. I feel like the fights kind of go 50-50, and that's kind of represented here in the line. I think the approach of the two fighters are kind of like the opposite of like the public kind of thinking of it. Like we've seen Jasmine just offensively wrestle, ground and pound people. If she tries to do that in this spot, bro, that shit's dead. Like, do not try to do that. Where you beat Fatima Klein is in the striking volume. Teammate of Aaron Blanchfield, very familiar with Fatima Klein, better a lot in the regional scene at Invicta, CFFC. There's one thing I'll say about her is is she grappling? No, she's actively participating in these grappling contests and jiu-jitsu tournaments and stuff like that. So her ground game is like top-notch level. She comes from Silver Fox BJJ here in North Jersey, and that's like the most pristine grappling gym that you can get in besides.
So I have one quick question. Is she a grappler or is she a wrestler? Because you said her wrestling game is top-notch, but is it grappling we're talking about, right?
Both. She can do it all.
So we're wrestling, okay.
She can wrestle, she can grapple, but she's more, I would say, if anything, from the years of me betting on her, she's more control time over submission position, but she has the ability to do the submission position. I think it's going to be a tough test. I could definitely see this one being split decision written all over it. The Jasmine Jasudavicius side does intrigue me with the plus money. It's my girl, but I gotta see what.
There's a couple pieces. There's a couple of things I want to sort of dissect what you had said there. So I know you said that she has strong wrestling, and I think that if Jasmine just went to try to out grapple a grappler or out wrestle a wrestler in that situation, that's sort of how you're going to actually even burn your own gas tank. That makes no sense. One thing I even actually talked to Prickett about was it's going to be your pressure on the feet. And a lot of people talk about the striking differential. That's sort of a moot stat at this point right now, because the actual striking differential is from the Natalia Silva fight. It's from almost one fight where she had a huge differential where she got tagged up a whole bunch of times. If you look at every other fight, it's just not the case in those fights. So on the feet, you're right, 100%. She needs to run pressure on her, push her on her back foot. But if she can, try to stay off the cage. At the same time, I think I'm not worried about Jasmine on the cage. I'm not worried about her, because the difference is it's not just grappling, it's not just wrestling. It's going to be the viciousness of elbows. It's going to be the viciousness of knees. And she is a bad fucking woman. And that, although Fatima Klein is as well too, it's just, you got to prove to me at this level, you're not going to break under the pressure of someone who's been under the lights and been in some deep wars and somebody who has, we'll see about the wrestling, man. I'm sorry. Jasmine's wrestling is like fucking right up here. Does she want to go up against and meet head to head with wrestling? I think that would be a dumb game plan, and I don't think that's going to be what you're going to see from Coach Prickett. But yeah, man, obviously I'm coming in a little bit defensive, being the, hometown boy, whatever. But I think it's good for people to see the dissection of this, because you do bring valid points with that. But I do also think that sometimes we look at just solitary wrestling or grappling or everything else, but forget it's in an MMA cage, mixed up with striking and mixed up with multiple things. And she is a vicious, vicious son of a bitch. And if you're going to give me her plus money on a level check, I'll take it all day long.
But it didn't open up at plus money. I'll tell you that. I mean,
no, I know.
If you're a line movement better and you are reading markets in the MMA, the bookies they do this thing where they do a lazy cap, I would say. They try to tapology,
just see where the market is.
See where the market is, and they just throw out a fucking line and just let it stick and see how the market reacts to it.
See where that is embedded? You're right. You're right.
To minus 130. I mean, I think so when I mean the market read on this, the market read I think is correct. I definitely think this is a 50-50 fight. I wouldn't. Whoever is plus money, I think that's the value side. Basically, is how I feel.
But I think right now, and I'm gonna once again now you're even showing me something here, because that line movement you can actually see where it is now. There's sharp ass cappers who probably have cashed on Fatima in the past that are able to throw out some money. It's not just one big fish. It's multiple guys like you that are throwing on money and jumping on that line right away, moving that line the way they moved it. But I think that's still based on a level check. Like we're not there yet. No one's seen it yet. So they're going on their assumptions that look, it's recency bias, but then also it's your ROI in her. It's the girl that's gone to the bank for you every time. So I get it. But I just think the level check is going to be the difference in this. But at the same time, I'm looking forward to it, and I love the fact that I was able to get plus money on Jasmine. So I appreciate the cappers that have been cashing on Fatima to at least get plus money on this. It makes me feel a lot better about the fight. But one thing I do look forward out of this, no matter what, is to see another prospect in the division that's going to be able to, surge and do well in the division as well too, as an MMA fan.
If there's one word of advice that I would say to Jasmine Jasovicius, do not fucking wrestle in this fight. The way you beat Fatima Klein is going forward and having her counter strike on her back foot. She's not that good of a counter striker. She's a poor man's Aaron Blanchfield. That's the best way to describe her. Like, how Aaron Blanchfield fights is exactly how the fuck she fights. And, like, how do you beat Aaron Blanchfield? Come forward, pressure, have her fight off of her back foot, have her questioning. And I think that's the way you beat Fatima Klein. This could be one of those ones where you see the person on short notice get a lot of hype, and they don't end up getting their win in their first UFC debut, but they end up having a good career. So it's one of those type of ones for me where I'm trying to measure like where the handoff is. But I think what's a lock in this fight, and I don't ever use the L word in sports betting, but fuck, man, is this going to judges' scorecards? I don't see. The only way I see this fight finishing is either Jasmine grounding her out late in the fight or Fatima getting some random ass submission early. Like, that's the only way.
Or like a third round head kick from Jasmine Jasovicius. But anyway.
Yeah, like I think fight goes the distance. It's going to be chalky, but it's definitely I think it's parlayable. Like, if you did fight goes the distance and that fight and fight goes the distance and Rose Namajunas, Tracy Cortez, I think you get yourself a nice little two-piece there.
Yeah, I think that one's definitely going the distance. I have, we'll talk about that one, but Rose and an over that I'm thinking about for a play. So, but yeah, no, I'm glad that we sort of broke that down and drew it out. And I knew that you sort of would be not necessarily on the side of Klein, but be playing devil's advocate, because you also have like there's that bettor's bias in it, like that somebody who you've done the research on and somebody you've watched and rightfully so. Same way I'm talking about Jasmine. So. But we will move on, because I'm sure that everybody doesn't want it to be just about that fight, because they expected that if they're listening in. But I will have you bring your spot, even if that was one that you wanted to sort of talk about. But bring your first spot to the table.
Yeah, my first spot to the table here is a little bit unconventional, but this is how we're going to attack the card. I wanted to bring this one to you. Which two-piece this week sounds more appealing? The Brazilian two-piece of Gabriel Bonfim and Luana Santos, minus 154. I think Luana Santos, the more and more I think about that fight, that's probably one of my most confident spots of the week. Oh, minus 300 women's MMA. What could go wrong? Man, I'm a big fan of Maria Agapova. She's one of my favorite low-level women's MMA fighters. But there's one thing I'll say about Maria Agapova right now. I'm questioning her mindset coming into this fight. Been following her on IG for years, and she's been homeless this last couple of 3 to 4 months, and I don't think it's the Impa Kasaganai homeless story of I'm homeless and I'm going on a PFL run championship. Sounds like homeless of are you getting the right nutrition? Are you getting the right work in the gym? You're asking followers for money. Just all red flags. Luana Santos, yeah, she's had some very boring fights so far in the UFC, but sometimes boring just pays out, man. I think she's going to get the grappling going in this spot. Her striking isn't the best, but it could be serviceable in this spot for her enough to get the takedowns. The only person that she's lost to is Jenna Bishop, and Jenna Bishop is a hell of a grappler in her own right. That's definitely a level check. But I think the way Luana Santos handled Stephanie Egger, granted, it was not the most entertaining fight, but Stephanie Egger's a great litmus test, I feel like, in this division. If you can get past Stephanie Egger, yeah, all right, you might be top 15, top 20-ish. But if you can't get past Stephanie Egger, yeah, we might have to take it a step back here and rewind the wheels. But I think it's a smash spot for Luana Santos. But this is where the second two-piece comes in. Fuck everything about the cap, about Gabriel Bonfim. He should win. Does his cardio hold up in Denver? That is the only question I have, because he should be able to win the first round at a very high rate in this fight. Hence why he's a minus 400 favorite. The bookies are setting it up where they don't want it to be minus 250. He wins the first round, and then it goes up to 400. You're basically seeing what the live odds are going to be after round one. Is the Gabriel Bonfim fight. And it could probably go up even more if he runs right through him in round one. Is it that one at minus 154, or do we attack Christian Rodriguez going against Julian Erosa, or does Juicy J got one more juicy submission in him? The weight class thing kind of is throwing me off a little bit, but I also feel like I could just be reading into it too much, the way that Christian Rodriguez pushes pace. As long as he stays out of something cheeky early, I feel like Julian Rose's durability throughout history is just honestly just depleting, fight by fight by fight. Nothing against Julian Erosa. I definitely think he's a tricky type of fighter, but man, his losses just have not looked good or aged well. No. They're just it's bad.
It is. No, so you asking me, do we go with C-Rod or do we go with
Bonfim? So C-Rod,
I'm going to make it easy for you. 118. Or do you have a two-piece, or you're saying you want one of the other guys?
Well, I was basically bringing the ingredients to the chef and letting the chef cook it up.
Well, I already have that as one of my plays. So my two-piece for the day is, or for the week is C-Rod and Santos at minus 117. So Bonfim, although I think is really levels above in that fight, that is the thing that scares me with the gas tank in Denver. And you just see it in Mexico City. You see it in Denver, and Denver's much higher. People just die after the first round. And that's why you'd almost be on, if you went with Bonfim, you would be banking on Agapova and get her gassing in the second round. And then you'd be holding on to your fucking ticket, for dear life, praying that same thing that just helped you doesn't kill you. So yeah, I think C-Rod's someone who's serviceable, who's shown time and time again that he can get into that third round, push deep pace, probably a more well-rounded fighter on the card. So yeah, for me, I think he's the spot in this one. I think that if you look at it, actually, I want to even attack them. The parlays minus 117, but you can also attack them inside the distance. I think that C-Rod's win conditions are decision KO and a club and sub on Erosa. Erosa, I don't see him winning a decision in this stylistic matchup. He's just pretty much got to either win via a crazy head kick or win via getting into the ground and slowly working a submission by a mistake by C-Rod. And I just don't know if I see it anymore. I think that his last two losses don't look that great. He has, 3 decisions in 21 and 22 combined. So that whole decision thing was sort of scaring me. It might creep to decision, but I don't think it's going to, man. I think that this one ends inside the distance. I think that if Erosa wins, it's by an inside the distance. And I think that C-Rod might win by a decision, but that's where the parlay sort of covers me if I go inside the distance with him. It's just more of an extra sprinkle on top. To back you up on Santos, I think that Agapova, I haven't been following her. I actually unfollowed her, I think. Because it was just a lot of crazy Florida, like artsy stuff that was follow up from, and I don't want to shit on it because, you know, I have my history as well too, addictions, and there's mental health issues there. And I don't think that she should be training for fights. I think she should be focusing on other things to get those things lined up and maybe come back in a couple of years to maybe get a couple fights before she's too old. Because she just doesn't quite seem to be fully invested in it, because she can't be. You know, how can you be? And if I'm hearing she's not living at home, then I mean, this is sort of an easy bet in that way, because she's going to come with hellfire and brimstone in the first round, you know, pouring emotion into it, and that's going to be her only way to win. Because if she tries to draw this fight, she's just going to she's going to be tired. 2nd round, 3rd round in Denver, it's going to be sleepy time. So, you know, if you told me she was already in Denver and living in Denver and training in Denver and been doing that and trying to work in the cardio, I'd sort of be backing her, because I do like her volatility and her you know, her violence. But at the same time, this one ends inside the distance too. I think I think Santos can finish her inside the distance late. I might sprinkle round props 2nd and 3rd round. But I just think that one's going to end inside the distance as well too. I may even look at it live, depending on how that first round plays out. Maybe Agapova comes out and looks like a you know, crazy bat out of hell, and maybe Santos holds on, and then she wins the next 2 rounds handily, because Agapova is just sucking on money.
Santos round 2-3 sub. Kind of going back to what you're saying about Agapova, even if wherever she's at, it's got to be somewhere in Florida, and that's got to be one of the biggest C difference levels and of the whole entire card is from Florida to Denver. Remember when the NBA Finals happened with the Miami Heat and the Denver Nuggets a couple of years back? They were talking about how drastic of a C difference level it is, and how much of an effect. But, you know, we're getting into the altitudes and shit like that.
We're rambling on, but I mean, the reality is I think that 2-piece hits, man. I think it cashes, and if you guys want to get cute with it and look at some props, I'm going to be hitting some props or looking at some lives. But I just think, you know, I'm a fan of Erosa. I love his story. I think, honestly, maybe his past choices in life maybe also affected him getting knocked out in his later choices in his career, because, you know, his addictions and everything else did not help him. Doesn't help the body, man. So you got to be all in. You can't have that stuff lingering. And you know, we're talking about 2 people on this card. It just doesn't quite work. So
feed the addict parlay.
Well, I mean, look at it. Like, I'm actually want to talk to a doctor about this and get them on a podcast and really dig into this about the dehydration of a certain lifestyle and everything else. Because if you even look at Cody Garbrandt, like, he was an alcoholic, right? And when he was like, he's admitted alcoholic, he's found Christianity, and good for him. I think it's Christianity. But during that time period is when he's getting knocked out. He's getting lulled into instinct and just throwing down crazy, but likely dehydrated on a level that we can't even discuss, or because we don't really know fully because we're not doctors, but likely dehydrated. So what does that do to the brain when you're weight cutting and you've already been drinking heavily outside of camp? It's got to do tolls on the body and tolls on the brain, and you just go to sleep. Your brain wants to shut off to defend itself, and it's not going to, you know, engage in combat when it's already engaging in combat by itself. So that's the whole idea. I know I'm rambling on now, but that's something I want to dig into. It's very valid in MMA because there's a lot of people that have stories.
I think it's definitely valid, especially for this matchup. I mean, you see the one girl crying on Instagram about how she's crying for a UFC fight, and then the UFC actually gives her a UFC fight. I don't think she's the A side in this matchup. But, I think that's the 2 piece to go with this week. What's your second spot to the table? We talked about a little bit of women's MMA here. Are you switching it up, or are you staying in the same lane?
I'm sticking with women's MMA, and I was going to stay off the main event. But in taping Jasmine Jasudavicius and looking at Tracy Cortez, although she puts it all together nicely. Like, she can put together like a high volume pace on the feet, and she has such high level wrestling. Her grappling is really, really solid. That being said, if you slow-mo, which I did because I was editing this up, this is where I started to see things, holes in her boxing that I thought was way better than it was. You know, and who am I to say, but fuck, we're doing it, right? There's holes. And do I think maybe Jazz could exploit all those holes like Rose Namajunas could? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think she did, right? And I think that where where Jazz couldn't, I think Rose will be able to. I think Rose, like, I was going to stay off this altogether. You know, the lines, it's a little bit away from you at money line right now, and you don't want to really be touching that. I think this fight definitely goes the distance. I think that's a parlay piece or an over. But I even like Rose Namajunas. I think it's minus 108 right now by decision, and I'm okay with a little bit of chalk on it, or minus 105. But even Rose on an over as a late night, that's going to be one of my sort of, you know, make or break type things. If the night hasn't been going well, I think Rose on an over is just going to hit. I just think there's an overthought here. Cortez coming in on short notice, coming in from California, I think it is where she lives, pretty much going to church, taking selfies. And I know she's training hard. I'm not going to dismiss her training, but at the same time, that's just not Denver, and it's not the cardio level. Now, cardio doesn't always hit everybody the same, right? She might not affect her. She may be solid, you know, Mexican cardio, not valid because she doesn't live in Mexico City. So yeah, I don't know, man. I just think that Rose is going to be able to just pick her apart. And everybody's looking at the Esparza fight, and it's like, well, can we stop capping off of that? I think it's time to stop capping off that fight. It's one of the worst fights ever in the history of MMA. It is. But that was the threat of a takedown that she sort of was worried about, and whatever. She's learned her lesson from that, realizing that you can't do that. You got to answer it with some knees at times. You got to actually land on these wrestlers. So I just think Namajunas is going to be able to run at distance and pick her apart for 5 rounds. The over's there, whatever way you want to play it. I know that's something you might be looking at. But Rose Namajunas is a play for me by decision, minus 105, and whatever it will be, Rose and the over in a parlay.
Yeah, I definitely think if you're on the Rose side, you know how FanDuel has the I made so much money in the last year off of these fighter to win and round 2 to start.
Yeah, that's a Billy Briz play, man. Straight up, not to cut you, but that's a Billy Briz. A fighter and a over. The fighter and the over 1.5. The fighter and they cash. Even if the fight ends inside the distance, you seem to cash on those a lot.
I feel like that's what you should do here with Briz Namajunas. Rose and the over 1.5, or Rose and fight to start round 2 or round 3, depending on where the odds are. I definitely think there's ways to make money on it. I'm probably still on the sidelines on this main event. Haven't been really main events. This is one of those ones where, like, I'll probably have a couple parlays to end out the night with Rose, and then try to arb it with like Tracy Cortez by decision or something like that. But then already have the overs and some parlays. I definitely think it's one of those type of cards where you should probably have made your money before the main event.
No, I get it, and like, even in the fact that I'm sort of picking apart her striking, saying it's whatever, but she did actually end up cracking Jasmine's orbital bone in that first round, right? And that's something that I forgot to mention again. Jasmine got her orbital bone cracked in that first round, still lands 77 strikes, and could only see out of one eye in that fight. So she fought through it and was able to do it. She didn't say anything about it. I even asked permission from Chris and Jasmine. I said, "You haven't said this to anybody. Can I do it?" And they're like, "Yeah, no problem." So I put that out there to everybody in a reel. She couldn't even see. So, but the reality of what I was going to say is Cortez still hits really hard. But even in that slow motion where she cracked Jasmine, it's just really wide, and really there's so many openings. So although she's fast, I think timing will beat speed in this fight. I think that the grappling of Namajunas is so high level that she'll be able to at least stay out of trouble enough with Cortez's wrestling to get it back to the feet, to sort of ride into her jab, work her jab out, and sort of just win a decision. I think Rose Namajunas in the over is definitely the play. And why don't you bring your final spot to the table?
Yeah, this is actually something that we do in college basketball, that I'm testing the waters in the premature stages. It's called the luck rating in college basketball, where certain teams fall into just unlucky game scenario situations or something like that. Maybe they had the lead for majority of the game, they ended up blowing it away, or some random foul trouble at the end of the game. And I thought that was an interesting characteristic. It's due. You never want to be the he's due guy or that person's due guy, but I do think there is a little bit of an unlucky rating on this card, and it's going to be the first fight of the night, man, here with Andre Petroski. I just think there's a clear grappling advantage for Andre Petroski here on Josh Frem. Josh Frem, 2-3 in the promotion so far. I mean, yeah, could he come along something late? Probably so, but I think it's going to be Andre Petroski pushing the action in this fight, him working the offensive grappling in this fight. It's going to be ultimately up to his cardio. If he wants to see this fight hit the judges' scorecards, I definitely think it's in his wheelhouse where he can pick up 1 and 2, drop round 3, like kind of a little bit of like the Gerald Meerschaert fight. I definitely think there's a little bit of negative condensation towards Petroski's name value off of his last couple of fights. The dude literally ran into Jacob Malkoon's knee, and then the fight before that was on vacation overseas.
The man got knocked out by his hip. The man ran into his hip.
Ran into his hip, and then the fight before that literally was on vacation overseas. Manager called and said, "Yo, you try to fly back home and take this fight on short notice against Michel Pereira up a weight class." He said, "Fuck it, yeah, let's ride," and he got knocked out. So I definitely think, yeah, you could make some durability concerns. Yeah, you could talk about his cardio, but the one thing that I don't feel like a lot of people are talking about is Josh Frum can't wrestle, man. Like I just, there's just nothing in the tape that I've seen in the past that tells me that he's going to be able to defend the takedown to Andre Petroski. Now, I think the reason why I like Petroski as a bet is because I think it's Petroski's fight to lose. What he's going to be dictating the pressure. He's going to be dictating how much of cardio are they going to be pushing. And at that point, why the fuck is he at minus 104? Damn near a pick 'em or plus monies. I feel like he should be the minus 140, minus 150.
I'll tell you why. Because I got Josh Fremd at plus 108. That's why. So, yeah, no, I see it. For me, it was just knocking yourself out on somebody's hip. And then you have a guy like Josh Fremd who, like, everything you say about the level check, or the level at least with the wrestling and the pedigree of wrestling and that technique should win this fight. That is the reason why now I'm definitely a stay off at this price. But now I can even come on the other side of it now. I got it at plus 108. If we had done the podcast last week, he was actually in a parlay. Hear this one out. I was going to get really aggressive with Josh Fremd at plus money with Jasmine to anchor it. Now that one, obviously, when Jasmine's fight with the Roju was out, that switched up. But let me tell you what I see. He lost to Anthony Hernandez, and I think most people in the division lose to Anthony Hernandez. Tresean Gore is the only really big thing that really kills me here. With Tresean Gore, that guillotine, it's like, how do you get into that guillotine the way he got into that? That fight I was on Fremd because I don't like Tresean Gore. I think he's just not very good. He's a powerful guy, but what it was, he gets in that guillotine and he's so muscular that he just can't get out of it. Like it's the muscles are in and around the neck, and you see it, and there's no way out of it. But it was a little bit of poor fight IQ. Against Kopylov, he didn't on the feet, man. That one was not a good matchup for him. Just not good. But Fremd does have that dog in him, and I don't want to use that cliche shit, but he really, really does. So him at plus money against a guy who just slept himself on someone's hip, I was into it. But I fully see your side on Petrovsky, and it's also why I will likely look at the chaos of the first round. But here's my only thing. Petrovsky's cardio, it does sort of fade. Although it's not as bad as everybody sort of plays it up. Cappers sort of magnify things, and it gets worse in people's heads than it actually is. It's not as bad as people think. But in Denver, I think it's going to be pretty fucking bad. So I'm going to be looking at Petrovsky to maybe control the first round, and then I'm going to heavily bet Josh Fremd if he doesn't get him out of there really early. On the line.
I don't know. I feel like we've seen Andre Petroski on some abbreviated camps of recent, coming in on a full camp. I think his cardio is going to be in check. If we're getting taken down by Jamie Pickett twice, Tresean Gore 3 times, Alex Fluffy Hernandez 8 times.
I get it.
I just got to play it. It's just a system play for me, man. I feel like when the value goes down on Andre Petroski, that is the best time to jump on. This reminds me of the Nick Maximoff fight all over again.
And I can see him dominating, like just sort of relying on the wrestling and using it and pushing the pace to what he needs to, like you were saying, and just sort of winning a 3-round decision, maybe even getting him out of there in the 3rd round. Petroski could do it. He's got power in his hands too. Could even maybe touch him early if Fremd really, dips one way when he shouldn't. I mean, that being said, though, the Fremd at plus money was a no-brainer for me, just because Petroski put himself out on somebody's hip. That alone is like, there's so many things we can say about camps and
That's unlucky though, Cal. Like
But
the
how do you
last
put yourself
two
out? How
fights,
do you get knocked down on someone's hip, bro?
the last two fights, I gotta say, have to be some of the unluckiest shit I've ever seen in MMA.
But
You
there's
ran
luck
into
and then there's like
somebody.
what's going on with his brain? Like, how do you get knocked out on somebody's hip?
I'm just saying, you get knocked out on somebody's hip, and then 4 or 5 months fucking before that, you took a fight when you're on fucking vacation, and God knows
That one I'm
where
with.
you from, and you flew overseas, and then you just fight up a weight class and you get knocked out.
Yeah, that was just poor decision making. I'm with you on that. I just think that like knocking yourself out on somebody's hip. My whole thing is it's not just about like, oh, just a poor decision or whatever else. It's like, is there something wrong? That there's some questions there for me. But I get what you're saying with the idea of finding value in a guy that, although he's had a little bit of a bad run recently, his technique should ride in this fight, and his sort of level of he just consistently can get to that wrestling the way he needs to, then he should be able to win this fight handily. But we shall see, man. Denver's always a funny one, man.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say is a little bit, I guess, betting bias, because it's like sometimes the best time to bet on certain MMA fighters, I feel like, is when the values hit its lowest. And we've seen the value hit its lowest before, and he was damn near a plus 300 underdog and got a first round submission. So it's like when there's value on it, am I backing Andre Petroski at minus 250, minus 200 price tags? Not really. The Gerald Mearshart fight, dude, I'll never forget this. Was at work on a Saturday and was watching the prelims on my phone, and the restaurant that I worked at, I was a cashier, and I literally had to tell the lady, shut the fuck up, be quiet for like 20 seconds in those words, because when that judge's scorecard got read out, like I'm watching the third round and like I'm like paying attention, but like I'm like, damn, I don't have the sound on. This got to be fucking close. Like I thought Petroski was smoking him, and that it like I'll never forget that. I had to tell the lady, yo, you gotta shut the fuck up for like 30 seconds here. I gotta listen to this judge's scorecards. And it goes, Andre Petroski by split decision. And I'm like, let's go. It was like a big parlay piece. I believe that was the Sean O'Malley card when he won the belt. So crazy night, crazy memory. But if there's one thing I'll say about Andre Petroski, you cannot disrespect my man. The last two fights just haven't gone his way. But if there's one thing I'll say about Andre Petroski, if there's a dog in a cage, both of these boys must be dogs, because Andre Petroski's got that dog in him. Man, he's got that dog in him. He wants to win. He wants to be him. Is he him? I don't think he's him. But can he win this fight? Yeah, probably so. Like one of those type of things. Like, you know, like sometimes in sports where like you see somebody's confidence at so high and you're like, man, I respect that guy for, you know, his confidence is super high, knowing that he's really probably not that good.
So you're rooting for him.
Yeah, yeah, man. You go think you're top 10 as long as I have money on you on Saturday.
Just do not put Petroski in your NFL fantasy team. That man will knock himself out in the first minute. Man, put a helmet on. Helmets. It scares me. It scares me.
Do you like the idea, though, Cal, of the college basketball unlucky rating? Because that's one of the on KenPom. That's one of the biggest things on KenPom.
I get it. Hey, look at Kyle Nelson. Look at Kyle Nelson, where his career was at one point, and then look at where the market hasn't even caught up on him yet, right? The market has not caught on like they may now finally, because he's played the bad guy role after he may have finally made enough of a noise or whatever. But I'm with it 100%. I get it. You want to try to find guys where it's like maybe there was situations where like there was a split weird decision that maybe they should have won, or and Kyle had that as well too. Like there's multiple ways where you can see like he still had value in that camp even though he lost. There's still momentum building in a direction. So, but we shall see. If the man stays awake, definitely could take this one.
Yeah, dead ass. Whoever.
Okay, that was actually a fight that I was going to bring up, sort of like an honorable mention, but we could even just sort of hash out any other spots that you want to. And we've already built a parlay essentially through dissecting both of our spots. I know a lot of people on Cody Brundage. Friends don't let friends bet on Cody Brundage fights, because whether you're on his side or not on his side, something crazy is going to happen where he's like lighting up Abdul Razak Al Hassan, and then Abdul fucking judo hip tosses him on his head and puts him to sleep, or something, like some fucked up crazy shit will happen. Cody Brundage fights, you just stay off. And everybody's jumping. It seems like a lot of people are betting on him as the dog. What's your thoughts? Just stay away from that one.
I hate to say it, man,
You
but
see value in it?
I don't see value in the line. But
Like he could put Razak Alisson out, and he could even sort of get the wrestling game going and actually do something with it. But
I just don't even think Abdul Azak Alisson's even that good, man. Like
he's got judo with some heavy hands that aren't very technical.
You know what I see happening in this fight? The way Alisson's been fighting is definitely not the way that he used to fight. He used to just go forward, try to knock out people, but then he's fallen. Ever since that thing where he got hit with the domestic violence case, but he wasn't
Mr. Narrative.
charged. He wasn't charged at the end of it. But long story short, he hasn't been the same since then, man. Since then, he's fought Munir Luziz, Chaos Williams, Jacob Malkoon, D. Chirico. He beat like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5-2. I mean, 2-5 since that situation happened. I can't not say it's hasn't played into a psychological advantage when it comes. Sometimes when I'm breaking down fights, I kind of want to. Did you watch that new Roku series of Dana White and the boys behind the scenes, how they create these fights? Great insight of how fights are created. My thought process is them in the room for this fight had a Denver card. They're giving Bo. They gave Bo Nickel Cody Brundage. Cody Brundage gave a decent account of himself. The sports books won on that one and went over 1.5, and Bo Nickel still won by finish. What fucking more do you want from that fight? I feel like if you're the UFC,
who out of anybody can mess up a Dana White gift?
That's what I'm saying. But I think that the reward is if this is your last fight on your contract, we'll let you go out on a card in your hometown.
Fair.
Fly, go fly. One of those type of ones where, man, I don't feel too confident in it, but I kind of like Cody Brundage by submission. That's where I'm getting towards.
Then the last one I want to ask you about, I'm just completely staying off that one. Maybe fight ends in round 1 might be a sprinkle for me, just for fun, the fun of it. Joshua Van against Charles Johnson. What about this one? So we have Charles Johnson, a well-rounded guy who's been somebody that if you get a plus money, he's a dog. Great live bet spot. He just gets the job done. But now going against Joshua Van, who's just, man, this dude is a murderer. New talent against sort of new talent in Charles Johnson. He's not that vetted in the UFC, but he's had a lot of fights in the UFC in a short time. Who do you like in this spot?
I don't let interviews be the confirming case for me, but I definitely do let it. It's interesting. You know what I'm saying? MMA is such a different sport than the rest of the sports. Basketball, NFL, they have literal media day every fucking day where like we're getting reports, we're getting the information that we need. It's there for the people and the public. For MMA, it's not really the same case, man. Like it's premature ages, bro. Like we're still like the fact that we still have to go on YouTube videos, search in like interviews and stuff like that just shows you where the stage of like media MMA is. Like that's wild to me. But watching Joshua Van's The R-Star interview that came out over the weekend, I'm staying away from this fight, man. Some of the shit he was saying in that interview was like, what? It's just like, yeah, man, you know, I was just chilling, drinking, getting lit with the homies, and, you know, my manager called me and said, yo, you want to take this fight in Denver? I said, fuck it, man, let's go. I see this dude. I fuck with Charles Johnson, but he's been calling me out and stuff like that. Yeah, man, let's get it. Like, the one thing
even if your paraphrase is 10% right, that is automatically a stay off, or even maybe going on the Charles Johnson side of things. So
yeah, bro, it's wild because it's like the one thing people always say about Joshua Van. Listen to any Joshua Van breakdown this week; they're all gonna say the same exact thing. Oh,
Joshua, if you really heavily want to touch this one, I think
he's gonna come along late in the fight. This, that, and the third. He's improving every fight. I think it's going to be the same Joshua Van that we've just seen last. Like, I don't see how much improvement he's going to make is my concern in this one.
I actually think that where you could see value in this fight is just to see how Charles Johnson handles him, how he absorbs those shots, how he sort of, you know, even moves around Joshua Van. And if you feel confident in Charles Johnson, you may end up getting value in him. In that
So
scenario.
aren't both guys slow starters? I've never seen Joshua Van win a bunch of first rounds. I've never seen Charles Johnson win a bunch of first rounds.
I think
So,
Van's going to probably have to come forward first.
He's going to have to come forward first.
He's going to be
right?
forced to come first, and how does that play for him? So now you're really I'm finding a spot here and talking about it. So I just think that at least live, Johnson is probably the way to look at this. We'll see how that first round plays out, though. Obviously, it could play out 1,000 different ways. So
Yeah, kind of
just
like
a couple
the
spots I
co-main
wanted to look
event,
at.
though. I kind of like the co-main event, though. Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Muslim Salikov. One I'll probably wait on a little bit, see how the market decides on this one. But definitely going to be trying to attack the KO or decision prop on Ponzinibbio here. It's kind of a gamble because I think it's definitely a loser leaves home type of fight. If Muslim Salikov loses this fight, dude should probably be cut at this point. 40 years old at this weight class, hasn't been having the performances aren't getting any better. So it's like, what are you
His
really
speed's
doing?
not there, man. His timing is not there. His speed's gone down. You can't rely on these spinning, crazy, elusive attacks, so you're not scared about them. That's also part of your striking. Once you've done that one or two times to guys, if people aren't scared of it anymore, then now they don't have to worry about it. They're not thinking about that. And the guy who's going to march through his kicks is Ponzinibbio. Ponzinibbio lands straight shots. He marches through fire. Sure, he'll take a shot, but I don't think Salikov is going to present anything that's going to be a problem. Sure, he can knock anybody out. He's still a high-level striker, but I think, he's long in the tooth. I think that I'm on Ponzinibbio pretty heavy in this one, and I will likely look at the same similar line depending on how much value is there. I haven't checked that out yet, but the decision KO and or find a way for it. So.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Muslim Salikov usually gasses out late in fights. That's not the type of fighting style you kind of want to go against Ponzinibbio. Pretty straightforward fight. I feel like it's Ponzinibbio's fight to lose. It would be him doing something uncharacteristic where he would lose this fight. Kind of like how he got knocked out in the third round. But I can definitely understand the case and scenario for the dog, but don't let that OV fool you. That boy ain't going to wrestle. He's going to be striking the entire time. That's going to be a Strikers Delight matchup. And then another Strikers Delight matchup. Hometown guy. The one thing that's scaring me is when we get into these hometown fights, we usually like backing hometown fighters or going with the hometown fighters. On this card, bro, it feels like I'm not picking any of the hometown fighters. And this is another one. Drew Dober versus Gene Silva. Man, the combination of
I was on Jourdain. That was my money line play of the week. That did not play out. Gene Silva's an enigma.
2 cents, bro. The combination of you and 2 cents that week. Because we did the locker room podcast the day before I talked to you. And we usually do the exercise where we're all building out the parlays. Everybody's got to agree to it. And 2 cents was pushing this Charles Jourdain thing. And I'm like, whoa, bro, calm that shit down. What are we doing here, parlay? The pick 'em price tag.
No parlay. You just hit it straight.
And it was just a spot that he was confident in. And then I feel like the exact same picture that he painted, I came back to you the next day and you had the same initial thought. And I'm thinking man, am I tripping the fuck out? What am I seeing wrong in this fight? This is, if there's ever a fight I could just stay away from, this is the easy one. I don't need to bet this fight at all whatsoever. And that's what ended up happening for me. And I ended up feeling like I left some money out on the table because now he's a pick 'em at the same exact price tag against Drew Dober. And I think he wins this one, bro. I just don't see how Drew Dober wins this fight, bro. I really don't, man. I think that Gene Silva is a where we want
to build me a sneaky parlay based on everything we just talked about. See if you can build this right now. Ponzinibbio, Bonfim, because you talked about that and you left him out to dry, and Silva Dober. You might not be able to get this yet. Ends in KO.
Oh,
so that fight
that yet.
But that fight ends in KO. Combined with those two pieces, if you have one of those main cards, sort of 2-3 pieces that you put together, I think that cracks.
I definitely think that cracks too, bro.
And Bonfim being the first leg is okay, so if he does gas, then shit, didn't play. But at least he's not anchoring, and you're not all worried. I'd rather have Ponzinibbio anchoring that whole scenario with the KO pretty much inevitable in the middle.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. But on this fight card in general, I think the higher up you go, the more confident you should be with your reads. I feel like the main card fighters, even though this isn't the best of cards, the main card fighters, we kind of know we already know what we know from both fighters. I feel like that's all the matchups on the main card. It's the prelims where it's like, I kind of don't want to be too invested on the prelims.
Some fights were thrown together, right? This was like an 8-fight card not too long ago. So when you get fights thrown together, there's a lot of variables. But I'm just going to hash things down quickly. So if we look at the main event, Cortez against Namajunas, both you and I agree that Rose is probably the side, but the over is more advantageous. So Rose in the over by itself, fight goes the distance, whatever way you want to attack it, take a look. But one of my plays is Rose and the over, and Rose by decision. Next, Santiago Ponzinibbio against Muslim Salikov. We both agree that Ponzinibbio is the side. If you want to put parlay Ponzinibbio in like a sneaky 2-piece or whatever I just talked about, I don't hate that, and or finding a finish in that is possible as well too. I think you were looking at decision or KO.
Yeah, KO decision. Yeah, I definitely think that's just a good. That's the side.
And then we got Drew Dober and Gene Silva. I mean, Dober is a guy who knocks everybody out, but has been cracked more recently. Gene Silva, this new surging talent with power in his hands. This fight is probably going to end by KO. I will likely parlay that, but plus money's probably the way to attack this fight.
Well, to pick them, give me the nerds. Give me the nerds gym right now, man. They're on one, man. I've been making money on everyone in the gym, so why am I going to go away here? Yeah,
ROI works. Bomb Fiend to bounce back is likely the spot against Angelusa. Willie Gas, I mean, if we want to run fear on that based on, small sample size of seeing him do that in Denver, it's the time to do it, to be worried about it. But at the same time, I think he does ride in this. C-Rod, we both agree, likely beats Julian Erosa. Erosa very volatile, can find ways to win, but I think that he likely dominates Erosa in whatever which way he's going to. Brundage, you think may have value? Potentially have value. Could be a setup spot for him. But if anybody can mess up a setup spot, is Cody Brundage. But at minimum, I know you're saying it's at least a, hey, man, your last time in the UFC at home, get everybody in the seats and go out on your own accord. So for that one, I would just honestly stay off. If anybody is smart, just please stay off the fight.
I wonder where the unders will open up for that one, because I think Alison's win condition is basically the same as Cody Brundage's win condition. I feel like
round one is likely fight end. Round one is probably going to be -205.
Yeah, I don't see that fight going.
Joshua Van, Charles Johnson, as we talked about it, you saw an interview where he just said some reckless stuff about him short notice on maybe partying, whatever else, which may not affect a young guy. May not, he may be training and still be able to do that shit. That being said, Charles Johnson may have some live value. There's one guy that, throws down like a dog, but then there's one guy that just finds ways to win late. I know both guys are talked about to win late. Maybe even fight ends in round 3 or by decision on either side. Definitely a way to look at it.
And you know what they say, Cal, when you're 22, you feel like you're invincible and you're on top of the world and nobody can tell you shit until reality comes knocking at the door.
Young, dumb, and Charles Johnson won. Jasmine Jasdavicius against Fatima Klein. I know you brought the sort of devil's advocate to the table because Fatima Klein is somebody on the regional scene that you've cashed many, many times and really is a legitimate talent for the division. It's just, I think for me on my side, it's just going to be coming up in weight. I think it's going to be a little bit of a size thing there. I think that Jasmine's just experienced under the lights and her pressure is going to be different here. Although both girls seem to have, solid grappling and wrestling, I just see that Jasmine's going to be the side and it's a level check. For you, it's more of a stay off based on the fact that you do see value in Klein. But plus money on a level check for me is just, it's a system bet for me.
Yeah, I can't put myself in a simp bet scenario. Love Jasmine Jasdavicius.
Do you just call me a simp?
I can't.
I said system, man.
I love her personality. Love her fighting style. I love what she brings to the table.
Oh, by the way, we talked about and debated what the game plan is going to be. I got to tell you, unless I was lied to, because I could have been lied to, I sort of know what the game plan is going to be. So I can't. Obviously, I'm never going to use that as a thing or say that as a thing to anybody. But I'm pretty happy. So we'll just say that. We got Luana Santos against Maria Agapova, possibly one of the more confident spots in the card. You pointed out that she may not even be living at home right now and even have anywhere to live right now. I mean, we don't want to try to exploit that situation. It's absolutely horrible for her, but she can't be in a good situation going into a fight. especially when you have to have good cardio. Like, that's the last thing you're thinking about. Like, she already has bad cardio. She has to catch up in that. And she's already trying to, she's likely going to get finished inside the distance. I think Santos is easily a chalk parlay piece, but I'll take it all day long. It's one of the few female chalk parlay pieces I've been feeling pretty confident in.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. I think Luana Santos best spot on the prelims to like kind of get the night started a little bit. Like, I wouldn't be too invested in other.
The Montel Jackson, Damon Blackshear, we don't have to talk about it. I just know it was put together pretty quick, I'm pretty sure. And it's just a volatile fight. You can just say what side you want to go on in that, and then we'll jump into the Frem Petrosky to wrap it up.
Love Montel Jackson's fighting style, but is the too low of volume punching numbers going to come back to haunt him on the scorecards here? Because I think this is going 15 minutes.
So maybe an over. There you go. We find a nugget in it. Perfect. Josh Fremd and Petrosky. I got in on Josh Fremd at plus 108, I believe it was. At dog money, I just saw some value. More so because he did have scenarios sort of like what you were saying before about Petrosky, where I don't think that his value equals some of the ways that some of his fights played out. That being said, you know, the styles makes fights, and potentially the technique of the wrestling is going to be the thing where Josh Fremd likes to get taken down, and he sort of tries to grab that guillotine and sort of accepts position. And if you're on a Josh Fremd money line spot where he's like minus 120 where he is right now, you definitely don't want to be sitting on that ticket when he's sitting on his back. I'll sweat a plus money ticket. I'm not going to sweat him at minus 120, whatever it is. So Petrosky's likely the side with the technique, but he did knock himself out on a grown man's hip. So I don't know.
Isn't it crazy though, on this whole entire card, the biggest line movements are on the prelims? Because I mean, man, the Jasmine line that was like the Fatima line was plus 200, went down to minus 138. Petrosky was minus 160. Now he's at minus 102. So we'll see how the cookie crumbles out. But, you know, that in-between break week from UFC, a lot of people get a lot of gun-ho happy on these type of cards. Make sure you remember bankroll management as always. And don't fall for the echo chamber, I would say, this week. There's going to be a lot of echo chambers. A lot of people eager to get back into MMA, betting and content in the spaces. Tread lightly, I would say, on this card.
And remember, friends don't let friends bet on Cody Brundage fights. Okay? For Billy Briz of Pub Sports Radio, I'm Cal McGregor. Tune into the Donttap Podcast.